One area where the Clinton campaign actually does want more transparency has to do with a possibility of a government cover-up of the existence of extraterrestrial life. And I'm not kidding. Clinton campaign chair John Podesta was on with Jake Tapper discussing this yesterday.
Tell us what you're going to do when it comes to Area 51 and whether or not the U.S. government knows of aliens, should Secretary Clinton be elected president.
Well, what I've talked to the Secretary about and what she said now in public is that if she's elected president and she gets into office, she'll ask for as many records as the United States federal government has to be declassified. And I think that's a commitment that she intends to keep and that I intend to hold her to.
Have you seen any of these documents? You were White House Chief of Staff years ago. Have you seen?
President Clinton asked for some information about some of these things, and in particular, some information about what was going on at Area 51. But I think that the U.S. government could do a much better job in answering the legitimate questions that people have about what's going on with unidentified aerial phenomena, and they should, the American people can handle the truth, so they should just do a thorough search.
What is the truth?
And open it up.
Is there evidence of alien life?
That's for the public to judge once they've seen all the evidence that the U.S. government has.
What do you think personally?
What do I think? I think there's a lot of planets out there.
Well, he's right about that. I looked into it.
Okay, so
There are many.
before we get to the substance of this, John Podesta, if anyone in politics looks like an alien, though, especially the way they shot that, though, it looked like there was like,
well, what they did with
Sith Lord was behind him.
Yeah,
right?
If it's the sort of thing where it's like an alien inside of a body pulling levers, that's Wolf Blitzer.
So I'm kidding, John. It's okay.
That would have been a great move, though, at the end if he just grabbed his face like that.
Oh, you don't believe
You
me?
tell me.
Well, if he was an alien, he'd be the last one talking about it. So I guess he's the one who's definitely not an alien.
No,
No,
good
it's
point.
like the he who smelt it dealt it thing. I'll get them thinking about the other aliens.
So when I read the story, I thought he was, tongue-in-cheek and largely kidding, but kind of, but kind of serious at the same time.
No,
wow, that was not tongue-in-cheek.
No, at the
serious.
Wow,
end.
that was totally serious.
And he stonewalled at the end, which was sort of weird. And it's interesting that we're doing these two stories one right after each other, because this is exactly what I was talking about in the last story. By putting the smokescreen up, by stonewalling, now you make me, Mark Thompson, I don't think that they're sitting on a big, powder keg of information. I know that there are a lot of interneters who are going to, please send me all the stuff. But I think in general, they're not, the government by now, we would have heard something
right.
of what they have.
Somebody would have leaked
It
something.
is just,
Well, some CIA
but
agents, former CIA agents, have said that they have seen evidence.
Oh, well,
and stuff
okay,
like that.
yeah, I know, and I've got an
Just
uncle
the
whose
crazy
brother-in-law was actually contacted, et cetera. But what I'm trying to say is by stonewalling, it's making me think, well, maybe there is something here.
Yeah.
That seems bizarre.
But you say somebody would have leaked, but that was Podesta kind of leaking. He was
Yeah.
the chief of staff for a president.
He was leaking that he saw information
was.
that a president wanted to see, but then ultimately asked, well, does it happen? He went for the stonewall instead of, he could have said, no, come on. I mean,
I know, but that sounds like there is information.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Well, and by the way, this
I see what you're saying. By the wink, wink, he's saying there is.
Yeah.
This isn't just Podesta. So Clinton pledged in January to get to the bottom of whether rumors of U.S. contact with extraterrestrial life were true. She apparently takes it seriously. And one of the consequences of her recent fundraiser...
Would not have said that. It would not have said that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So she had that fundraiser with the wall of static. I now have to assume she was talking for 40 minutes about aliens. The entire thing front to back.
So it
top
all
to
does
bottom.
work
We had
together.
some
There
of
you
them there.
It might have been totally aliens. We don't know. There's that big...
Here's what's wrong with America.
fence.
We had a perfectly good euphemism, or what do you call it with the letters? NASA acronym. Thank you, euphemism. What's wrong with me? You'll see why I came up with euphemism. We had a perfectly good acronym, UFO. UF. That's where I got euphemism. So UFO, and now all of a sudden it's been changed to unidentified aerial phenomenon. Like somewhere along the lines, UFO. The cool people now say UAP. Fuck off. UFO.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
It's part of the
flying
cover-up.
object. Now it's not, but maybe it wasn't flying. It's just in the air.
Hovering.
Come on, man.
Okay, now that Ben has made that very important point.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do want to make two substantive points about this story. One is about access, and we talk about the cocktail circuit, et cetera. It's real, and that's why I'm super happy that we based the show out of Los Angeles and not in Washington, D.C., which actually would have been a logical place to put it. But we dodged a bullet on that one. Here's why I say all of this. Because Ben and I once met with John Podesta. And then I think I saw him one other time. And you know what? Ever since, I like him. And I'm biased towards him. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And I wanted to defend him in this story. Because I know him and he was decent to me for a couple of minutes or an hour, right? So
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, but
I like him based on that video.
Yeah, he didn't say anything indecent there.
No, I know. But I just wanted the audience to know that because what happens with the DC reporters and we get on them and we yell at them, et cetera, is because the DC reporters are in DC.
That's true.
And they spend a lot of time with the Podestas of the world. Podesta is now running Clinton's campaign, which I vociferously disagree with. But to this day, I haven't really criticized Podesta at all. So I'm being honest about my bias there. But almost all the DC reporters have that bias they probably aren't even aware of.
Yeah.
Not because they're bad people, but that's because human nature. Maybe because they're good people. You spend some time with somebody and they're a decent human being to you, and you don't want to tell things that are going to hurt them, which oftentimes is the truth.
And here's another reason. I mean, you spent your time at MSNBC, so you met a good number of people. But imagine if Podesta was the only one that you had met. You see him differently than you see the others. The people who work in D.C., those journalists, they meet everybody. They're biased in entirety in terms of all of them. But I see him there, and I love the textured suit. That was a nice touch. But what he was saying about the aliens, I think he's almost certainly true. He's almost certainly right. Not that we have evidence at Area 51 or whatever, but the universe is gigantic. I think it's absurd to think that there aren't other aliens out there. I don't know that there's necessarily information held somewhere in the FBI's vaults or anything. But if I became president, that is the first thing I would look into.
The crew
First day.
I'm going to get rid of
hour one.
Yeah, I'm going to do this. John's like, no. Give me the alien list. Okay. Which, fair enough, I would be curious about. But so let's just two more things about it. One, on the aliens. Of course, there's aliens. We already know there's aliens. There's water on Mars. So wherever there's water, there's going to be some sort of living organism. Boom, that's an alien. Now, whether they have made contact with us is an entirely different question, right? And what are they, right? We have no idea. They're not going to just look like us or things that come out of Star Trek. Right?
Yeah, this isn't Star Trek. They don't look like.
Right. So, so the idea like that, the aliens exist in some sort of kooky theory. No, it'd be super kooky to think that aliens don't exist. Given the trillions of planets that there are in the universe, it's almost statistically impossible for there not to be aliens, right? Yeah. So again, that doesn't mean they made contact. Okay, and then finally, it's interesting how our assumptions about people inform how we view them. Because Dennis Kucinich also had a comment about aliens when he was running for president, but he was considered by the mainstream press to be kooky. So when he mentioned anything to do with aliens, they were like, we knew it! Kucinich, you idiot, you loon! That's it, you're disqualified. I remember Chris Matthews, with the spittle flying as he was laughing at Kucinich. Now it's Clinton's a top person, and they're like, oh, interesting.